Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief. Very clearly, one of the big topics heading into 2026 is AI-related job disruption. It has been a major topic at the World Economic Forum at Davos. It's something that is clearly on the minds of people across the US, and especially in an election year, seems like it could start to become a political issue as well. Now, one of the things that we've seen with some frequency is studies that try to measure the amount of exposure that different jobs or professions have to AI disruption. In other words, which jobs are most likely to be disrupted versus which jobs are least likely to change and be disrupted. A new group from the National Bureau of Economic Research argues that that is actually missing one of the key questions. We need to not only know, the authors suggest, which roles are most susceptible to disruption, but how adaptable different categories of workers are if that job displacement should come for them. To figure this out, the study creates a novel measure that they call adaptive capacity. Adaptive capacity includes a few different factors. The first is liquid financial resources. This is perhaps obvious, but the authors write, workers with greater savings weather economic storms more effectively. They point to a 2008 study that shows that individuals with greater liquid savings are less financially distressed after job loss and take longer to find better matching jobs. Low-wealth individuals, on the other hand, are sometimes forced to take whatever they can get, leading to lower quality employment. The next factor of adaptive capacity is age. They point to a 2017 study that showed that workers aged 55 to 64 who experienced job loss during the Great Recession were significantly less likely than those who were aged 35 to 44 to find new employment afterwards. And the difference was about 16 percentage points. Everything from retraining to relocation to switching occupations is more difficult for that older cohort. This leads overall to job loss for older workers, leading to greater earnings losses and lower reemployment rates overall. A third factor that the authors include is geographic density. And once again, this might seem a little bit obvious, but they point to a 2012 study that found that workers who were in more densely populated areas, basically think big cities, had less challenge making work transitions compared to those who were in comparatively low density areas. And intuitively, again, this makes sense. More densely populated areas are going to have more jobs, which means more opportunities for those who lose their jobs. The last factor that they consider is skill transferability. When a person has skills that can be applied across many different jobs, that creates more occupational mobility than if you have a highly specialized skill set. Once again, the authors point to a 2016 study, this time showing that individuals with higher skills transferability had smaller earnings losses after displacement. The authors acknowledge that there are some other things that could impact adaptability, such as income and union representation, but they argued that based on the literature and previous studies, those were less conclusively linked to better outcomes, and so decided to focus on these four areas. The authors then combined a set of 6 primary datasets to create a composite measure of adaptive capacity by occupation. They looked across something like 350 jobs representing about 96% of American employment. From there, they were able to group people into 4 different categories. Basically, they looked at the Adaptive Capacity Index, this new measure that they were creating, and an AI Exposure Index about how susceptible to disruption their profession was. One quadrant then, in many ways the most desirable, at least based on the terms of this study, were jobs that had both high adaptive capacity as well as low vulnerability. On the other end of the spectrum were jobs with low adaptive capacity and high vulnerability. In the middle, of course, were roles that have high vulnerability but also high adaptive capacity, or low adaptive capacity but also low vulnerability. Summing up their findings, the authors write, on average, highly AI-exposed workers appear well equipped to handle job transitions relative to the rest of the workforce. Yet 6.1 million workers still face both high exposure and low adaptive capacity. Basically, they found that the quadrant of workers who had high vulnerability to AI disruption, but also a high adaptive capacity, represented around 26.5 million workers. This included occupations such as software developers, financial managers, lawyers, and in their words, other professions that benefit from strong pay, financial buffers, diverse skills, and deep professional networks. Given that, the authors write, these well-positioned workers, who observers often cite as being highly threatened by AI automation, likely possess relatively strong means to adjust to AI-driven dislocation if it were to occur. The group instead that they are most concerned with is the 6.1 million workers who face both high exposure to AI disruption and low adaptive capacity to manage a new job transition. The authors write, many of these workers occupy administrative and clerical jobs where savings are modest, worker skill transferability is limited, and reemployment prospects are narrower. Meaning, of course, that if those folks experience AI-related job loss, they're likely to be at risk of lower reemployment rates, longer job searches, and more significant relative earnings losses as compared to others. Now, one of the critical findings is that among this group, with high exposure and low adaptive capacity, 86% of these most vulnerable workers are women. Whereas some of the occupations, like software developers, financial analysts, and web developers and marketing managers, have high exposure, they also have diverse skills portfolios, they tend to work in dense metro areas, and they have liquid net worth that can be in the hundreds of thousands. There are also geographic patterns in the vulnerability. The authors find that vulnerability is concentrated in places like college towns and state capitals that have lots of administrative positions that are supporting institutions. Places like Laramie, Wyoming, Stillwater, Oklahoma, Springfield, Illinois, and Carson City, Nevada have something like 5 to 7% of their local workforce being in this high vulnerability category. Now, I think this is super interesting analysis, but one of the things that stands out to me is that when it comes to measuring adaptability, a lot of the measures that they're using presuppose a world where there are a similar number of other jobs to adapt to. In other words, my concern is that it might be underestimating the structural changes to work. Now, the authors do note this. They acknowledge in their limitations section, somewhat in passing, that if AI, quote, fundamentally reshapes the economy, these historical relationships may not hold. But I think that caveat understates the problem. Every component of the adaptive capacity index is calibrated in a world where displacement is localized and destination jobs exist. It basically models AI disruption as a larger version of a plant closure or a trade shock, discrete localized events where affected workers transition into an otherwise stable economy. Pretty much all the historical evidence they cite describes exactly that type of scenario. AI, of course, could work differently. If it affects cognitive task categories rather than specific firms or industries, you could see things like simultaneous pressure across related occupations. The secretary, customer service rep, insurance claims processor, and office clerk all face exposure at once, meaning they can't absorb each other's displaced workers. We could also see some pretty significant shifts in skill complementarity. The framework assumes skills are either transferable or not, but AI might make some skills radically more valuable while devaluing others entirely. Transferability becomes a moving target. The question is basically, what if there's no adaptive capacity that prepares you for a world where the category of work you do is being structurally reduced rather than shifted? The framework that the authors provide can tell you that a 58-year-old medical secretary in Springfield, Illinois with $3,000 in savings is going to struggle more than a 32-year-old software developer in Seattle with $200,000 in liquid assets. What it can't tell you is what happens if there's simply less demand for human cognitive labor in aggregate. And so does that mean this isn't useful? I would argue that no, it is still in fact useful for a very specific reason. Effectively, what these authors are helping provide is triage policy during a transition. Even if there is total structural disruption, human and institutional inertia is likely to draw it out over some time. And net-net, what this research can help show is that the most vulnerable groups identified here might need the fastest and most direct policy response even as we figure out the full extent of the disruption. There is a strong argument to be made, in other words, that whatever the endpoint looks like, whether it's structural transformation, a more modest acceleration of existing automation trends, and whatever happens on job creation on the other side, the sequencing of the disruption will likely follow something like the vulnerability gradient that this research identifies. If the conventional framing of this would have been, we'll help these workers transition to growing occupations, the more honest version might be, we don't know what the labor market looks like in 10 years, but we do know that these workers will face income disruption first, have the least capacity to self-insure, and are concentrated enough geographically to reach efficiently. We should get resources to them fast while we figure out the rest. A lot of what you are hearing me advocate for on this show is less fanciful imagined discussion and much more direct and discrete policy discussion. And I think that the findings in this study can contribute to exactly that sort of discrete policy analysis. I will link to the study in the show notes so you can go check it out for yourself, but for now, that is going to do it for the AI Daily Brief. Appreciate you listening or watching as always, and until next time, peace.